You're lying in bed. It's 11:47, and you're replaying a conversation you had at work 3 days ago. You've been over it probably 40 times in your head. You've decided you said the wrong thing. Then you decided, no, you said the right thing. Then you decided, no, it was the wrong thing. Then you told yourself to stop thinking about it, which obviously did not work because here you are still thinking about it. And this isn't new. This isn't a one-off. This happens multiple times per week. You think about emails before you send them. You think about emails after you send them. You review decisions you've already made and can't change just to see if maybe they were wrong. You ruminate about things people said to you, things you said to people, things that haven't even happened yet and just might. Your brain just will not stop. And if you're anything like the women I work with, you've probably tried to fix it. You've told yourself to just let it go, which that didn't work. You've journaled it out. Maybe you've meditated, or you've tried to, until your brain started overthinking your meditation. You've Googled how to stop overthinking approximately 1,000 times, and yet here you still are. So today we're going to talk about why that is. Not in a vague, inspirational way. Like in actuality, here's what's happening in your brain at a neurological level. Because the reason you can't stop overthinking is not what most people tell you it is. And once you understand what's actually driving it, that's when you have a real shot at interrupting it. I'm Loewentheil. I'm a master certified life coach, feminist philosopher, and a New York Times bestselling author. I've spent a decade helping high-achieving women understand why their brains work the way they do, and more importantly, how to change them. Not with affirmations, not with toxic positivity, with actual cognitive tools that work. By the end of this video, you're going to walk away with a completely different understanding of why you overthink and 3 specific things you can start doing today to interrupt the loop. Most women I talk to think they overthink because they're just wired that way, because they're anxious, because they've always been an overthinker, like it's just part of their personality. Same way some people are left-handed or bad at parallel parking. But overthinking isn't something you're born doing because you have an anxious brain or personality. It's a thought pattern your brain learned, and everything you've learned, you can unlearn. Here's what's actually driving it, and this is the piece that most people in the self-help world aren't talking about. Once you understand it, everything else we're covering today clicks into place. So let's start with what overthinking actually is, because most people are trying to fix the wrong thing. Overthinking is a thought pattern you were taught to have. It's your brain running a specific loop that it has been trained over years and often decades to run. When you overthink, it's because your brain has identified something it perceives as a threat. It doesn't have to be a physical threat. It's often a social threat, or the threat of judgment, the threat of rejection, the threat of being wrong, or being seen as incompetent, being found out, or being disliked. Your brain was built evolutionarily to be obsessed with threats. It's a survival mechanism that kept humans alive for thousands of years. So when your brain identifies something as a threat, it will not let it go. It will keep scanning, keep analyzing, keep running scenarios until it feels safe, but it never gets to feeling safe because ruminating only makes you worry more. Women are specifically socialized from a very early age to treat other people's perceptions of them as a constant threat. We learn that how we're seen, whether we're liked, whether we're doing everything correctly, that these things matter and are what put us in danger or keep us safe from social acceptance, rejection, love, and when you're a child, survival. So those get wired in as things to monitor constantly. So your brain isn't doing anything weird or broken when it's ruminating. It's doing exactly what brains do with threats. The problem is what it's been taught to identify as a threat. And for high-achieving women, there's an extra layer. You often believe that you've gotten where you are by being careful and precise and not making mistakes, right? You were praised early in life for being thorough and prepared, and that got you rewards and good grades and promotions and praise. So your brain has learned, I have to control everything and be perfect in order to get ahead. And it seems like that's what has helped you get into the rooms that you're in. When you've gotten into a higher level in your career, you actually can't get ahead through being careful and conservative and never making mistakes. You have to start taking risks, which involves the potential for failure. So your brain isn't equipped for that. And when it's ruminating, it feels like it's problem solving, but it's not. Because real problem solving ends when you get to an answer. You identify a problem, you think through it, you land on a solution, and you move on. Overthinking just loops, right? It doesn't accept an answer. You find a conclusion and your brain immediately reverses it, goes back a step, generates a new related question that keeps you spinning again. What if I was wrong? What if that's not what happens? What if it isn't like that? Maybe I missed something. There's no answer that your brain holds on to when it's ruminating. Overthinking is not intelligence. It's not conscientiousness. It's not a personality. It's your brain doing exactly what brains are supposed to do, detecting threats and refusing to let them go until the threat is gone. But the threat of other people's opinions of you or of potentially failing when you take risks are not threats that will ever go away. The more successful you are, the more your brain thinks it has to lose. So your brain is overthinking because it has spent years building up a case for why you have to be careful, why one wrong move matters, why getting it right is so important. And your success has just given your brain more evidence that the stakes are high, and more evidence that self-monitoring and obsessing and ruminating is going to keep you safe. That's not actually real evidence, but your brain thinks it is. So when you wonder why you're still lying awake replaying conversations, that's why. Your brain is doing exactly what it learned to do. But the mechanism that may have even helped when you were younger or earlier in your career and your success depended more on managing lots of details or something like that is now the thing keeping you stuck. There's a specific version of this that I see constantly in high-achieving women. And I have another video on my channel that talks all about it, but I want to mention it here as well because it drives so much of that overthinking loop. It's called imposter syndrome. And at its core, imposter syndrome is a specific fear. The fear that someone is going to look too closely, figure out that you don't actually belong, and expose you. That fear is underneath a lot of the loop. The replaying of conversations, the overanalyzing of how you came across, the second guessing of decisions you already made. A huge portion of that is your brain on high alert for evidence that you're about to be found out. The problem is you already got in the room, you already built the career, you earned the credential, you got the seat. But your brain is still running like you're one mistake away from losing it all, even though that's not really how things work. It's protecting you from a threat that mostly doesn't exist anymore. And that is what we're working to change. Most people try to stop overthinking by just telling themselves to stop overthinking. If you've tried this, you already know it doesn't work. That's because most people don't understand what's actually running the loop. The loop has 6 steps, and once you can see them, you can start to interrupt them. Step 1 is the trigger. Something happens. You send an email and you don't hear back. Your boss has a certain look on their face in a meeting. You make a decision, even a small one. You say something, and the moment the words leave your mouth, you're not sure how they land. Step 2 is the thought. Your brain generates an interpretation of whatever just happened. It tells you, they probably think I'm an idiot. I said the wrong thing. What if I made the wrong call? She seemed annoyed. Did I do something? Step 3 is the feeling. That thought creates an emotion. Anxiety, dread, a low hum of unease, or a sudden spike of urgency. Something feels off and your brain wants to fix it immediately. Step 4 is what you do with that feeling. And this is where the loop really kicks in. Most people either spiral and they keep generating more thoughts, running more scenarios, trying to think their way through the anxiety, or they just try to avoid. They don't send the follow-up or ask for clarification. They don't bring up the hard conversation. They withdraw from the situation entirely and just hope it'll go away. Step 5 is what I call the false relief, because eventually the intensity dies down. The email does get answered, the meeting ends, enough time passes that the anxiety fades, and your brain registers that you got through it. And your brain thinks, hey, all that ruminating helped, right? Your brain mistakes correlation for causation. It did not help, but your brain thinks it did because you ruminated and then eventually you felt better, even though actually those things are unrelated. And that brings us to step 6, which is the loop. Your brain has now been reinforced. So next time something triggers that fear of judgment or that fear of being wrong, your brain goes to that go-to strategy. Think harder, analyze more, don't stop until it feels resolved. And that's why you have that loop running at 11:47 p.m. when you're lying in bed staring at the clock. You cannot break this loop by adding more thoughts to it or just telling yourself to stop. Analyzing why you're overthinking is still thinking. You can't outthink a thought loop. So there's a framework I use with my clients called the thought ladder, which teaches you to actually change the thoughts you're having. The core idea is that you can't leap from they definitely hate me to I don't care what anyone thinks, I'm amazing. Your brain won't accept that jump. It's too far from where you currently are, and your brain has too much evidence for the original thought to just let it go. Real thought change is gradual. It's building a path of believable thoughts, ones your brain can actually accept, that slowly moves you from where you are to where you want to be. We're going to go much deeper on the specific tools for that in another video coming soon on the channel. But for now, remember that the goal isn't to think positively. The goal is to think differently. And that's a skill. It's learnable. Now that you understand what the loop is and where it comes from, let's talk about the things that keep it running. Because most people are unconsciously doing all three of these and wondering why nothing changes. Number one is trying to reason your way out of it instead of changing the thought driving it. When you're anxious about something, your brain wants to think it through until it feels resolved. But when you do that, you're not actually addressing the thought creating the anxiety. You're just piling more thoughts on top of it. But maybe it's fine. But what if it's not? But I'm probably overreacting. But what if I'm not, right? Your brain could just go around and around. The anxiety isn't going to go away because you reasoned with it or logicked it away. It's going to go away when you identify the actual thought and fear underneath it, the belief your brain's running about what the threat is, and use real cognitive tools to shift it bit by bit to something your brain can believe instead. That's the difference between spinning in the loop and actually getting out of it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the tools section. Number two is crowdsourcing the analysis. When you're stuck in the loop, it feels like the solution is more input. So you text your boyfriend, you run the email you drafted by a colleague, you bring it up with your therapist for the fourth time, you post in the group chat and you wait for someone to tell you that you're not crazy. And it helps for like 20 minutes, and then you're right back in it, ruminating all over again. Every conversation about it, every opinion you collect, every reassurance you receive, it's all feeding the same loop. You're still circling the same fear, you just added more people to the circle. And we know this is true because the relief never lasts. Really think about it. If crowdsourcing actually worked, you do it once and be done. But you're not done. You're back asking the same question to a different person the next day. The path forward is actually identifying the specific thought driving the fear and changing it. Number three is confusing over-responsibility with caring. A huge amount of overthinking, especially for women, is specifically about other people. What they think, how they feel, whether you upset them, whether you came across a certain way. And there's a cultural story that this is because women are naturally more empathetic and attuned to relationships. Maybe, but there's something else going on that doesn't get identified nearly often enough, which is that women are socialized to feel responsible for other people's emotional experiences. So we're taught explicitly and implicitly that it's our job to make sure the people around us are comfortable. And that if someone is upset, it's probably because of something we did wrong. So the overthinking that sounds like, did I upset her? Was that the wrong thing to say? What if he thinks I'm being difficult? It's actually a form of manipulation. It comes from trying to keep ourselves safe and trying to control what other people think and feel. If we want to show up authentically and honestly in the world, we have to change this pattern. I'm not going to give you a 10-step system because that's not how this works. I'm going to give you 3 things that will actually help, and I want you to pick one and try it this week. Tool 1 is name the job. The next time you catch yourself in an overthinking loop, stop and ask yourself one question. What is this thought trying to protect me from? What job is this thought trying to do? Get specific. Not, I'm just anxious, but what is the actual fear underneath this? I'm afraid my boss thinks I'm incompetent. I'm afraid my boyfriend is mad at me. I'm afraid I said something that made my coworker not like me anymore. When you can name the specific fear, that will shift things. You're no longer drowning in a diffuse cloud of anxiety. You're watching your brain and understanding it do a specific thing for a specific reason. That small amount of distance is enough to start working with it. Tool 2, identify if it's solving or spiraling. Real problem solving has an endpoint. You identify a problem, you generate options, you make a decision, you act. There's forward movement, there's resolution. Spiraling loops. The same thoughts come back, the same questions generate the same anxiety. You've been circling for 20 minutes and you're no closer to an answer than when you started. If you've been thinking about the same thing for more than 10 to 15 minutes without getting any closer to a solution or a decision or action, you're most likely just spiraling. Recognizing that is actually the most important move you can make, because once you know you're spiraling, you know that more thinking with your current set of thoughts is not going to help you. That's your signal to stop waiting for your brain to stumble onto a solution on its own, which it won't, and to start directing it on purpose. Identify the specific thought that's driving the fear or the inaction or the indecision and choose a more believable one to move towards. Take control of where your brain is going instead of just letting it run. To do that, you use tool 3, which is the believable next thought. And this is something that a lot of think positive advice misses. When you're stuck in an overthinking loop, the standard advice is to think positive thoughts, right? Tell yourself everything's fine. Remind yourself that you're enough. Your brain doesn't believe that shit, not when it has 45 minutes or years of evidence for the other story. So instead of trying to leap to the positive, look for the believable. What's a thought you could actually hold right now that is slightly less terrible than the one you're stuck in? Not everything is fine, but something more like, I don't actually know what they're thinking. Or, even if something goes wrong, I can handle it. Or, I've been here before and I got through it. It's small, it's grounded, and it's something your brain can actually accept. That is the thought ladder, which is how real thought change works. You don't jump to the top, you build your way there, one believable thought at a time. So let's come back to where we started. You're lying in bed, it's 11:47 p.m., you're replaying that conversation from 3 days ago. Telling yourself to stop thinking about it is not helping. So here's what you know now that you didn't know at the start of this video. That loop is not a character flaw. It's not proof that you're broken or too sensitive or just have to be anxious. It's a pattern your brain learned, and it's a pattern reinforced by the way women are socialized to monitor themselves, manage other people's feelings, and stay safe by never getting it wrong. Your brain thinks it's helping you. And the path out isn't to keep thinking the same thoughts about it, or to ask someone else what they think, or try to magically just ignore it. It's to understand what the loop is actually trying to do, interrupt it at the right level, and start building new thoughts that your brain can actually believe. That's learnable, it's changeable, and you're already doing the work just by being here. The most common version of the overthinking spiral is usually about other people and what they think, which is why that's where I want you to go next if you want to keep building on this. Watch this next, and I'll see you over there.